Installation SQL Server 2008. The first step in administrating the SQL Server database is quite often the installation process. Although installing SQL Server is a fairly straightforward process, it is of the critical importance. The installation wizard identifies all the prerequisite objects that should exist prior to installation. Successful planning and pre-configuration of all the requisite supports objects will make for a much smoother and a successful installation. SQL Server installation planning. Hardware consideration. SQL Server will run on a system within minimum hardware, but the performance is not going to be stellar. Even the recommended hardware is to be exceeded whenever practical. Upgrading almost any hardware object on a server hosting SQL Server 2008 will result in improved performance. All things being equal, increase the amount of RAM available to SQL Server first. However, the underpowered processor or slow disk system will cause just as many performance problems as insufficient RAM, but RAM limitation will often cause processor and disk issues. Processor consideration. Microsoft sets the minimum processor at a speed of 600 MHz Pentium 3 or compatible processor, but recommended at least 1 GHz processor. SQL Server utilizes the processor extensively during the compilation and execution of query plans. Your server can have extraordinarily fast disk array and plenty of RAM, but if it has an underpowered processor, it is all for naught. As the workload of the server increases and the more and more transactions are executed against it, the processor will have to schedule and handle the multitude of query execution plans and programmatic manipulation of data. Memory consideration. The minimum amount of RAM according to the Microsoft is 512 megabytes. SQL Server creates and maintains different memory pools for various database operations. There is a buffer cache that is used to store data pages retrieved from the disk. A procedure cache that is used to store the compatible stored procedure triggers, function views and query plans. A log cache for transaction log operation. Having sufficient RAM on hand allows SQL Server to minimize overhead. Storage consideration. An often overlooked hardware aspect of SQL Server installation is the disk subsystem.